Hello, everyone. I see a lot of old friends starting to pop on, and some new ones, and of course the family, which I appreciate. So thanks for spending a couple minutes with us. Here we are, Tuesday at 11, and we wanted to just update you a little bit on our thoughts and on the playbook. And I think it's safe to say, starting week three of shelter in place is taught me some things. First of all, I do not enjoy the facial hair. I will not. Will very much look forward to shaving this off as soon as I can, which is going to be when the shelter in place is behind us, and that will be an enjoyable day. And hopefully, the bottom of my shower will be filled with this stuff, and I won't see it again ever again, because that's certainly the idea. So hope everybody's staying sane and having some family time. And I'm sure I can speak for at least our family when I say the drawers have never looked better. The garage has never been tidier. And I guess if that's the one good thing that comes out of all this, I guess it's better than no good thing. So anyway, as I promised to do, I'm not going to talk about things I don't know about, but I do want to share our thoughts on the market. And I do or I will say that obviously today is the last day of Q1, and what a quarter it was. So what makes this time extraordinary, in addition to the fact that it's this sort of global pandemic has never happened in the era of sort of financial markets that we're living in, but I can say it does have some things in common with downturns in the past, right? And so the financial crisis, and even back to the tech wreck. We can go back and look at the playbook we used then, and I'm going to kind of share with you how we're looking at the months ahead, obviously, as we go into Q2. So I think it's interesting to note it's not all going to be captured because you won't be able to see the numbers, but I think you'll see the idea, which is obviously last day of the quarter, markets are not, they're kind of going out on a bit of a sour note. Obviously, I think it's very interesting that the last week, as we've had a few up days, the level of communication I've gotten inbound from our clients has really dipped. And I think it's just a measurement of fatigue that we all have, and the fact that at least a couple of up days gave everybody a moment to breathe and not necessarily tune in to the financial aspect of the crisis. But my point being, markets going out on a bit of a sour note. And I don't know if it's captured up here well, but of the three strategies that are the largest for our firm are here, here, and here, which are all either about even or even up on the day. So what I wanted to point out is this is how we adapt to the turbulent conditions. And when we last spoke on Friday, I talked about the way that we hedge and how and why we do it the way we do it. I talked about it as a volume control rather than an on-off switch. And you've heard me say this if you're a client of the firm, but the way that we manage your money, and depending on what strategy you own, we're always mindful of how it feels, how the ride feels, and how sports cars ought to perform like sports cars and sedans ought to perform like sedans. And that's really, really key, because we find out when we meet with new clients a lot of times they thought they had a sedan when in fact they had a sports car. Very often that's too late to make that observation after there's some event that generally is unpleasant. So for us, that's always what we're keeping track of. Super proud of the strategies and how they performed this quarter. I think you'll all see when you look back. I think it's interesting from a raw performance perspective in Q1 of 20. We're really not even as bad as we were Q4 of 18. Which is hard to imagine because you can't even imagine a global pandemic in the entire U.S. global economy shutting down virtually overnight. And I think I guess the most heartening thing about yesterday for me was that when Sunday the president announced that we're going to April 30th in shelter in place, and futures were brutal overnight, and it looked like, oh gosh, here we go again with a down limit day. And then we came in yesterday, and that was not the case at all. In fact, yesterday was a rather pleasant day. So I think what it tells you is the market obviously has some handle on when it thinks this will all be wrapped up, at least from the health perspective. and maybe it was a little bit of a step ahead of the administration in terms of knowing that it was going to go at least through the end of April. We all hope not longer. I think we're, obviously when I hear Dr. Fauci say things like he's starting to see potentially some signs that we're having a little bit of positive momentum, that makes me really happy. I find him to be very credible and enjoyable to watch, and he makes me feel like he knows what he's doing. So what I will say is Q1, c'est la vie. I think as we're all, adjusting to our new life and shelter at home, there has been, the thing that I would say from a worry perspective is we've all heard that habits take about 3 weeks to form. And here we are moving into a 6-week or so shelter-in-place condition. And so longer term, I do wonder how, what business is going to look like, 6 months from now, and how many people are going to be rushing back to the exact same life that we all thought we loved 6 weeks ago, and now have adjusted to a very different one, which is why, and I guess I'll point this out, you've seen the things that we've shed completely out of the portfolio are what we would call ground zero of this economic reality. We had one airline gone weeks ago, like relatively early on. We've never really been big fans of cruise lines and have no desire to start bottom picking or trying to guess, when the bottom in airlines or the bottom in cruise lines or anything like that. Not our game at all. The true strategy always is collect a portfolio of companies, of businesses, and literally look individually at them and say, is that business likely to be larger in 3 to 5 years than it is today? And if the answer to that is always yes, then we're comfortable riding through some level of volatility with it. If the answer starts to be potentially no, then it becomes an immediate candidate for removal. And sometimes in a more pleasant condition, sometimes things just get reduced because they've gone up a lot. So even stocks we love or companies we love, we reduce. And that's just a way to adjust to what we do not believe is a bull market anymore. Clearly, I think we are now in a bear market, and I don't think I'm necessarily saying anything novel to point that out, but it does adjust how you have to be, how nimble you have to be, and I think highlights somewhat of a strength of our approach, which is the ability to adapt to new conditions quickly. And we are certainly, and we have done that, and we'll continue to do that. So what else was I going to talk about today? So I guess from a more fundamental basis, we have a lot of business owners as clients. I'm in a group of CEOs where I get to mingle with people who are running companies of various sizes, from smallish like ours to very, very large. And there's so much confusion and frustration around these programs. And so I have been in contact with our local bankers and people. And if you find yourself needing resources or are disappointed that you can't get anybody to give you guidance about these things, all these programs will ultimately be administered through banks. But we do have good information about them, and we have spent a little bit of time around here working calculations about what type of businesses will benefit from which type of relief program. So if you need a little bit of guidance on that, we're happy to point you in the right direction. But hopefully that's not your condition. It's going to be harder and harder to avoid this. Obviously Goldman coming out today talking about 35% decline in Q2 GDP. That tells us there's plenty of time to be brave in terms of redeploying capital. We're happy to err, as we've said, dial down the volume knob, err on the side of caution for the time being. Tomorrow starts a new quarter, and who knows how long this current relative calm will last, but we're prepared for it if it doesn't. And if it turns out that things are, in fact, getting a lot better than anybody had expected, we will, as we do, quickly adjust to a more offensive position. I hope that's the case. I don't think should be the expectation, for sure. So I hope you enjoy the last few days of calm, and I do hope it persists. But in the meantime, if you continue to have questions, let me know. I'm going to continue to do this as long as people find it helpful. So thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.